online safety, certainly with the Keeping Children Safe in Education 2022, it now you'll see will prioritise online safety. It seems that every single year since about 2013, when it was changed from e-safety to online safety, that things have gradually every year been more prioritised. But some of you that do know me, but most of you unfortunately don't, but John's quite right, that's what I did in my previous life. I'm still a researcher. Obviously, I work with the Academy of Law in part of the European Commission, despite Brexit, and doing lots of research in online behaviour of everybody, not just predators, but also of individuals and people like me and my daughters. Those of you that do remember me will be glad to hear my eldest daughter is now a teacher, a maths teacher in secondary school. My second daughter is now a graduate police officer, following my footsteps, and my youngest daughter, she is at Warwick University and will go into the army to Sandhurst at the end of her 3-year degree. And my wife is about to finish teaching. So I've got my family has been involved in teaching for many years. And it's always one of these things where with online safety, it's a bit unfair that schools get inspected in some ways. You're the bastions of child safeguarding when it comes to the government here in the UK, and then inspections for international schools as well, because what are you doing? Nobody ever asks that of parents, which I'll touch on. But yeah, so we look at these legal documents that come out and came into force on the 1st of September. Most of you will be aware of it. Some of you may have even read it, or you've been able to read something like I produce a little précis of what is new. So really today, what I wanted to discuss is what's the impact from KC 2022 on online safety. But most of you will be hopefully aware a lot of what your schools are already putting in place. Will keep children safe in the online world. But as you know, that I do talk a lot about online consequences as a result of unappropriate, unacceptable behaviour. You'll be aware of that. But I also now talk about online resilience as well, and online competence, which I will touch on. So I want to try and get to the newer, perhaps even the newer threats. It's very interesting that last week, 2 weeks ago, I think it was, or maybe 3, this organization called COSI, Child Online Safety Index, they created this index for the first time about where countries are. And of course, there was a lot of research regarding percentages of children affected by online bullying, threats, exposure to violent sexual contact. Now, it's interesting. I mean, I can throw these facts and figures at you, but percentages basically just say there's a problem in my book. But we've known that, and that's why you're here, and that's why you dedicate yourselves, if you're in schools or whether you're DSLs, etc., you dedicate that to making sure children are safe. There is the legal side to it, but also the fact that you care because you're teachers. But you can see the league table here. It's out of 92 countries that were tested, and you can see where you are. If your country isn't there, I apologise. Hopefully it is, but certainly a lot of countries are quite high up. Fortunately for us here in the UK, we seem to be put out as number 1. Now, was that because part of the organisation were British? I don't know. But I can say this, that certainly we've been prioritising online safety for many years. Personally, I've been involved with it for, well, over 20 years now because of my previous career, but also the fact that I've been going into schools for the past 15 years, and that includes going to conferences, including the likes of Fobisia, whether now on Zoom or in person. So you can see where you are. Now, a lot of people, a lot of countries, I was over in Greece and Spain, and I was showing the league table there. What do the figures actually mean? Well, position's position, which is worked out by that percentage, that figure out of 100. And the research was done to find out exactly what countries, not schools, what countries are doing, what they got in place for reporting purposes, for training purposes, so how children are being kept safe. So a lot of the European countries here won't have reporting buttons like we have, but they'll have certainly a European network where they can report. as do a lot of Southeast Asia countries. As you can see, some are quite high, but of course, with the organization like In Hope, you're able to actually go online there and report. But of course, with you, I'm talking about schools that are affiliated, should we say, to the British system, the British curriculum, which puts an added emphasis on you because of the fact that you will be inspected. More schools for me, especially when I now go to the likes of Greece, and parents were saying, well, this isn't available for Greek schools. So now I'm already having to translate my workshops and work with actually some actual Greek schools rather than international or British schools. So yeah, the message is getting out there, but the issues are still there, as you can see from the percentages. Well, that's what we know. We know that's there, but of course there are also things that we call new threats. I mean, when you look at the history, the historical side of legislation, you can see how far back this goes. That's probably what helps and assists the UK. Now, that includes, as I've said, British and international schools, because you really have been looking at these parts of legislation and making sure that your school or you as an individual have in place the ammunition to keep children safe. And I still say this, as I was saying just yesterday, the fact that you've got devices, you've got apps, you've got social media, you've got gaming and gaming communities. None of it still is created to be unsafe or dangerous. It becomes that because of behavior. So whether you've got a student age 5 all the way up to 18, if they've got a device, creating online profiles, using the devices and engaging online, then it's about behavior. That's the thing we've got to understand the most. Because as I said, school staff, you are professional identifiers of vulnerability. That comes to you as by default, because you're with a child 6, 7, 8 hours or even longer a day if it's a boarding school. So straight away, you've got the fact that you are there. And of course, if you come under the system, there's this legal expectation to keep students and staff safe. Some people tend to forget that, or some schools. The fact that written down in black and white is that schools must keep staff safe. But of course, then staff aren't children. So does that come under the DSL, or in a large school, should there be an online safety lead? And then we bring up to date with the 2022 Casey. And, I did create this précis. What does it actually say? Well, yeah, it still emphasizes the workshops, etc., but far more now about governors, trustees, executives, which becomes a bit of an issue, I've got to be honest, because a lot of schools are owned by companies. So you may not have governors or even trustees, but you'll have a chief executive that could be based anywhere. Well, could be in the UK, or it could be local to you. Now, if you've got governors, that's great. They need to be trained. They need to have a workshop now, and they need to be attached to the DSL or online safety lead as part of the online safety committee. That's quite easy to do. But if you've got a chief executive and you don't have, where does that fit in? If that company has 60 schools, it's not impossible, but just means we have to look at it. So I work with a lot of company schools and say, yeah, it's not a problem. We train to make sure the company are aware, because obviously schools and the companies don't want to have any issues. So it is about keeping the whole community safe, all the way from the top down through obviously the staff and to the students. But of course, you're talking about the parents as well. And that's where it'd be an issue, because parents are our parents. Last night at the school, we had 60 turnout. They were upset and disappointed. Actually, I said it was quite a good turnout for quite a small prep school. But some schools won't. Perhaps doing parental workshops by Zoom will work. But then we've got the new threats. Now, we know, or we all know what TikTok is. And just here in the UK, yes, we've got a new UK Educational Secretary now, but it was Nadeem Sahawi very recently said this before he left, about online abuse of teachers, incredibly damaging for a teacher's well-being and professional life. Totally agree. Where's this coming from? Well, TikTok, mainly the TikTok challenges, the school challenges. Some of you will be aware of those, but they are labeled for every month. September is always about damaging school property, filming yourself. October is about actually hitting a teacher and getting it filmed to put online. Oh, November, I think, is it kiss your friend's girlfriend to start a fight? These are the issues. Now, some schools say, oh, that's why we had damage to our school toilets. It could be. But you can see here, we've got the two areas. One, you've got damage to property, you've got physical abuse, all being filmed to be put on TikTok. And of course, you've got a lot of abuse of teachers. So who's dealing with that? Now, it could be that you're a wonderful school and you don't have these issues, but it may be that you have, or you may be going to a school. TikTok themselves aren't really going to do anything about it. All they've said is they'll increase funding for a support helpline. We are not going to get help from social media companies or platforms. Here in the UK, we're trying to introduce the online safety bill. I'm a firm believer, and I have spoken about the fact it will not work. Policing the internet, legislating about the internet is very, very, very difficult to do because of where servers, information's held, or where companies are. But somehow it will go through, but it's not going to really work in the sense of keeping children safe at all. So when you start to break KC down, and what is the impact on, and again, I have a PDF a document for you, should you want it. As Yoga said, please do email me, and I can send it to you and we'll share with the school so you can actually break it down yourself. But you should be still looking at your school online safety policies. You may want to create an online safety lead. I've recommended that for many years. Should that always happen? In a large school, yes, and certainly if you're getting issues in the online arena, and also if any teacher is being abused online, then that may come under the remit of an OSL rather than a DSL whose remit is about children. It's a school choice, which is, again, an interesting thing when it comes to this wonderful document. It doesn't really label in black and white what should be done in many ways. So that's one aspect. It doesn't tell school what they should do regarding devices. Should you allow students to have smartphones or their own devices? It doesn't go into that. That is quite unique to the school, and you make those decisions, which is why I'm talking to a school this week just on that. So you have to actually put things in and think sometimes outside the box. But of course, yes, there's that evolution, and we've had this child on child. I make no bones about it. 2 years ago, it was peer on peer. They've updated it to child on child. I've already heard criticism of that saying because, well, a child by law is anybody under 18, but we have people in school who are 18 and over, so they are adults, so we can't use. I've had all this. So it wouldn't surprise me if the update next year will be student on student. It still means the same thing. It's a bit like semantics. You know exactly what it means. It means somebody in your school is actually being nasty or abusing somebody else in your school. And of course, there's been updates on even 2021 with the annexes being changed. But yeah, it's about responsibilities. But if you boil it down, what actually are they saying in KC 2022? It's really checking on your policies and AUP staff training, which must now include governor, trustee, or executive training. What are new threats? Changing it to child on child. Obviously, reinforcing the importance of parent-students workshops, and of course, what is the filtering and monitoring. Now, you'll see towards the end when I talk about, well, what's your next step? I've been very fortunate over the last couple of years to work with a number of Fobisia schools, and I've been carrying out what's called online safety audits. You can do them over Zoom, but of course, you've got workshops, and I will obviously, there's lots of tick the box, and you get a percentage, you get a score, and literally all the schools that I will deal with will come out as outstanding. But now you've got the added bonus. If governors, trustees, or executives aren't involved in or don't have training, then I can't score that. That will automatically bring down the score because you've also got the added request now that every year schools should be producing data to show what they're doing in regarding online safety. Now, you may be inspected very soon, or you may have 3-4 years to wait, but that's what should be asked now. All inspectors should be saying, can I see your policies? What is the data? And that's an annual thing. So we've now really got to look at what schools are doing with governors, trustees, and the executive.